Welcome back to another lesson with me, Mr. B. In this lesson, we're going to learn about the several elements that make up a body paragraph. The body paragraph is the heart of the essay, where you'll be presenting your evidence that supports the prompt or topic that you want to address in your writing. So first we'll look at some essay writing tips that my high school teachers drilled into my brain, which is this body paragraph formula and what a body paragraph looks like. Then we'll overview the parts of a body paragraph in depth. And lastly, look at how to incorporate these 3 appeals that we learned about in the previous lesson. So like I said earlier, my high school teachers taught us an essay writing formula to help us remember what goes in a standard 5-paragraph essay. Typically, you'll have a topic sentence, transition or lead-in, quote, evidence or concrete detail, a proper citation for that evidence, some analysis, and your concluding sentence. So the formula looks like the stuff on the right over here. TS, CDCOM, COM, CDCOM, COM, CS. And each of these acronyms stand for something, which is the stuff we just reviewed in the previous slide. So TS for topic sentence, CD for concrete detail or evidence, including your citation with that, COM for analysis or commentary. Then you repeat that process again for the second half of the paragraph because you need at least 2 pieces of evidence in a standard body paragraph. So some things to take note of. CD means concrete detail and COM means commentary. This was the language that I learned when I was in high school, and it was very confusing because why not just call it evidence and analysis? But you never know, you may run into a teacher or professor in the future who uses this language. So the formula to the right, if you notice, it doesn't include the lead-in or the citation. It was assumed that you always remembered your citations and your lead-ins, and personally I always forgot it, so I ended up losing points on my essays. So make sure you pay special attention to your lead-in and your citation. And so as we go in depth with the parts of a body paragraph, you'll see why the lead-in and citation are so important to your writing and for your reader. Now let's take a look at what are the elements of a body paragraph. As we saw in the formula, there's your topic sentence, your lead-in, the evidence, your citation, analysis, and concluding sentence. Starting off with your topic sentence. This is the first sentence of your body paragraph, and it tells the reader what you will be discussing in this paragraph, specifically one of the topics you addressed in your thesis. This is how it ties back to your thesis statement. And because of that, it's almost like your thesis statement for the body paragraph. Now let's look at the example over here on the right. It says that Star's family is a controlling factor in the power of her voice. So this example does have an arguable claim. The writer is stating that Star's family is the controlling factor over her voice. And that controlling idea is also that, but focusing on that theme of, does your voice matter? And then all other sentences and parts of the body paragraph will support this topic sentence. So now we'll need something to transition us to the evidence we're providing that supports that claim of Star's family is a controlling factor in the power of her voice, which brings us to our lead-in. The lead-in briefly identifies who is talking to whom, where, and when in the plot the passage occurs. And for formatting reasons, it's not my rule, after your lead-in, there must be a comma preceding the quoted evidence or concrete detail that you're going to provide. So a lead-in for the example could be, Lisa is not convinced that Star needs to make a statement on Khalil's death when Uncle Carlos advises she speaks with the detectives, comma. You gotta make sure you have that comma there, all right? So we've given enough context to know who is talking, who they're talking to, where and when they're talking. And though there isn't a specific place or location stated in this, it does let us know that the where part is the conversation between Lisa and her brother, Uncle Carlos. But if you would like to, you could be more specific and say, at Star's home, Lisa is not convinced, etc., etc. This lead-in sets us up for the concrete detail or evidence, which is where you'll have at least 2 passages of your choosing that helps us support your thesis statement and speak specifically to the topic about Star's family being the controlling factor over the power of her voice. So your evidence or concrete detail and citations use quotation marks. The passage you choose provides evidence to support your claim, which is your thesis statement. You must use quotation marks and proper citations to prevent plagiarism. So over here, we have the author's last name and page number. Just like it says there, Orwell 52, you would write Thomas 52, and punctuation goes after the citation. So now let's look at an example. Uncle Carlos sighs. Lisa, the sooner she talks to the detectives, the better. It will be a simple process. All she has to do is answer some questions. That's it. So if you notice here, just to point this out, the citation is present and the punctuation goes after. In the case of this example, it's clear that the writer did not include the author's last name. Typically, when you're using one source, for example, we're writing about one book, you don't necessarily have to include the author's last name because there isn't multiple sources you're referring to. So you don't have to let the reader know that, hey, I'm referencing this author now or this author. Rather, we're just using one source, so you don't have to put the last name. But for the sake of practice and learning, include the author's last name. Now that you've stated your evidence, it's time to explain the big so what. And how does this support your thesis statement and your topic sentence? And you'll explain that by using analysis or commentary. At the minimum, you want to have 2 sentences, which answers the so what and analyzes your evidence. A good rule of thumb is for every sentence that you have in your evidence, you want to have at least 2 sentences of commentary or analysis. So your analysis or commentary, it takes place immediately after the evidence and explains how the evidence or concrete detail supports your claim. This is where you analyze a close read how the evidence connects back to your topic sentence and your thesis statement. So let's build on that example. This conversation between Lisa, Maverick, and Uncle Carlos shows how Star lacks control over her own voice. Although she comes from a strong family, she lacks agency to speak out for herself. So let's look at how the example connects back to the topic sentence and thesis statement. If we look at all of this together, now we can see our topic, we have our evidence, and now our analysis. Now it's time to wrap that all up with a concluding sentence. So the concluding sentence summarizes the points you made in this paragraph to emphasize the importance of the topic you're addressing. It should also tie back to your thesis statement. This space also transitions readers from one idea to the next. How does your first idea relate to the next body paragraph that's coming up? So here's the example. Star has yet to realize the power in her voice. It is clear her insight on the shooting matters and will have an influence as tensions rise around Khalil's death. So let's take this example and see how it looks in a body paragraph using the essay formula that I showed you earlier. Now take note that this is only one CD-COM-COM sequence. This is what it looks like altogether. Star's family is a controlling factor in the power of her voice. Lisa is not convinced that Star needs to make a statement on Khalil's death when Uncle Carlos advises she speaks with the detectives. Uncle Carlos sighs. Lisa, the sooner she talks to the detectives, the better. It will be a simple process. All she has to do is answer some questions. That's it. This conversation between Lisa, Maverick, and Carlos shows how Star lacks control over her own voice. Although she comes from a strong family, she lacks agency to speak out for herself. Star has yet to realize the power in her voice. It is clear her insight on the shooting matters and will have an influence as tensions rise around Khalil's death. And I hope that you notice there is a typo in here around quoting dialogue. So when you're quoting dialogue in your evidence, there's supposed to be single quotation marks. And clearly, in this example, I forgot it. So what do we do? So we're correct over here. We got our comma after the lead-in, and then we have our quotation mark right where the evidence begins. Now what needs to change is this part right here. The part where Uncle Carlos starts speaking is the dialogue within your evidence. That needs to be a single quotation mark. And when he stops speaking, which is after that's it, we have to put another single quotation mark. Now this looks a little funny, right? There's 3 quotation marks in a row, but you need to remember that that's a single quotation mark and then the regular one to close out the entire piece of evidence. So at the beginning and end of your evidence, you need to have the double quotation mark that encompasses the entire piece of evidence. And within that, there's single quotation marks to designate that, hey, someone's speaking right now. So up next is a little check for understanding. There's going to be 4 quick review questions to check whether or not you remember what we just reviewed about body paragraphs, because that was a lot of information. Up next, we're going to review how to incorporate one of the appeals, logos, ethos, or pathos, into your essay writing. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.